Right, thank you very much, John, and good morning, everybody. I'm sure you've all seen, or some of you have given TED Talks, or certainly you've all looked at the advice to people giving TED Talks, and a lot of other talks now. And they nearly all start by saying, tell them a story. So I thought the other day, I need to tell them a story. I need to tell you a story. But actually, I then thought, you're not going to be short of stories today. I'm not going to put a figure on it, but my bet is you will hear lots of stories about the terrible things that happen if you don't get security right. And they'll make your toes curl, and that'll be fantastic. But I thought I'd start, since it's first thing in the morning, and we all need a bit of cheering up, with a story that has a happy ending. And not only for that reason, it's called a fairy story. Fairy stories, I have to be very careful here because it's a very English thing, but we have a multicultural audience. Fairy stories are the sort of stories you tell kids. Actually, most of the ones we tell in England actually come from Germany, I realise. I thought I'd start by reminding some of you and telling some of you the story of the three little pigs. Three little pigs, you'll remember, three little pigs. They grow up and they decide to leave home and make their own way in the world. And off they go, and they've got these incredible ambitions and this terrific optimism, and they go out, and the first thing they need to do is build themselves, each of them, a home. And I'm going to jump to the end now, because everybody probably knows this story. And one of them builds a home of straw, and one of them builds a home of twigs, and along comes, can you believe it, a very unfriendly, big, bad wolf. And the wolf, in the famous line of the story, he huffs and he puffs and he blows the house down. He blows down the houses of paper, of twigs, of straw, all those things that two of the pigs decide to make their houses from. And he gobbles up the pigs, and he has a very nice lunch. But poor old pigs, they fail to realize their dreams. The last pig, as I'm sure you all know, builds a house of brick. And you can see exactly where this is going. Who are the pigs? Right, no one's going to volunteer. I'm a pig. And I think there are quite a lot of pigs in the audience here today. The pigs are the ones, essentially, you've got it, who want the Internet of Things to succeed, who want it to deliver the huge benefits it can deliver for all of us, who want to prosper in an Internet of Things world. And the wolf, of course, I don't need to underline it, is all the threats that will make that impossible. The great thing about the pig that builds its house of brick is that it's got this brick house. The wolf can't get in. It does eventually get in, but it only gets in through the chimney and ends up boiled in a kettle underneath the chimney. And it's a wall of, if you like, protective security. And that little fairy story I put to you contains a germ of truth of what it is we're trying to do at IoTSF. And I think it's worth, at the beginning of this conference, reminding us, first of all, of our broad mission, but secondly, why is this so hard? Why is it that we've been talking about IoT for a while now, and we've been talking about IoT security for a little while now, and we're still all here, we're still trying to find a brick, put it in the wall, put another brick on top of it, make sure this house is built. And that's not because we're not trying hard enough. We are trying extremely hard, all of us, every single one of you is trying extremely hard. But it's because the nature of IoT security is intrinsically complex. It is probably, I've not really thought about it before, it's probably the most complex thing, security arrangement that we've ever actually had to implement as a society. And it's complex because there are so many unknowns, so many different players. You've got software, you've got hardware, you've got trusted execution, you've got over-the-air upgrades, you've got a supply chain that reaches all over the world, practically. It's a difficult thing to get right. And of course, at the back of our minds, we all know that the cost of not getting it right, the cost of not getting security right, is actually, it's not just measured in money, it's measured in an existential threat. So security is essential, trust is essential, and if we get it wrong, we face an existential threat. There will be no IT, or at least not as much IoT as we need to deliver its real benefits. In this context, it's very important to identify what the unique selling points of IoTSF are. And I'm just going to remind us of those. I'm sure we all know them. But I think it's important because the security landscape, is becoming a more crowded landscape than it was in 2015 when we first set this up. But IoTSF still has hugely important USPs, in my view. And they're built around the compliance framework and the best practice guides and what those things represent. They represent objective, expert, well-informed, independent opinion as to how you do security. Those guides are flexible. They will move with innovation and they will move with the industry. They're easy to access. They're free at point of use. They are essentially the bedrock of our USP. And that's what we need to take forward into a world where these security issues are being increasingly debated. And what that all adds up to is an IoTSF framework which actually makes security as easy as possible. So I said a few moments ago, this is one of the most complicated issues I can think of, trying to make this new world secure. But actually, the key role of IoTSF is to help companies find their way through it. It's another sort of fairy story thing, really, isn't it? Find their way through the dark wood in as easy and as simple a way as possible. And if we are helping companies to do that, my next point is that we are also going to be helping governments to do that. John alluded to the fact that there is increasingly government interest in all of these areas, and we need to make sure that we're giving governments the right message. And the right message has got to be, don't overcomplicate, don't duplicate, don't fragment, don't stifle innovation. And we, IoTSF, already have a great product, a suite of products, which will help governments find their way through this dark wood too. So I think IoTSF is placed at a really, really important moment. If ever there was a moment where the time is right for us and our product, it is now. Increasingly, all over the world, you're seeing all sorts of governments and all sorts of companies beginning to focus more and more on what they can do to drive up the demand for security. And if you want to drive up the demand for security and you're wondering exactly how to do that, look no further than the products we have got. John alluded yesterday to the fact that we had a board meeting yesterday, and we talked a bit about our plans for next year. And those plans are actually pretty ambitious. They focus a bit on the stuff John described, the announcements that are coming up later and in the first bit of next year. But they also focus a bit on what I just mentioned, the need to get our message out to governments and others looking at possible regulation in this area. But they focused also on something John alluded to, the need to make this an international effort. And IoTSF, John is right, has got recognition internationally. You can go to the United States and Washington, and the department that looks after this kind of issue in Washington is called NIST, and it's produced reports, and it too cites IoTSF as one of the main contributors to the debate. And we want to build on that and take that further so that we secure wider international recognition for what we're doing and exercise wider international influence. So we've already started to talk about creating a US chapter, if you like. We've assembled a few companies in the US who are IoTSF members who are willing to work with us to make that happen. If you represent an American company or a company with a presence in the United States and would like to join that, please let me know. We're going to look next year at trying to take the message out to various conferences, trade associations, policy discussions where we can put across our views and win friends and influence people. And one of our ambitions for next year, and it's ambition so far, but I think we will work really hard to realize it, is to have this conference next year outside the UK in Munich. And we thought of Munich for obvious reasons. A, it's pretty accessible. B, more important, it's a very important European centre for some of the technology we are trying to develop and reach, and some of the companies we need to harness. So we very much hope that campaign next year will lead to a few more bricks being put in that house that protects the last pig in the fairy story. And what we have to remember is that, of course, that pig is actually living all over the world. So it needs to be, if you can stretch your imaginations this far, a house that stretches right across the oceans to everyone who is involved in trying to build this IoT world. Thank you very much for coming today. I think it's a great conference, it's a great agenda. There are some new themes, and there are some old themes with new twists. So I think we will all learn a lot as we sit through the day, and I hope you also enjoy it very much. Thank you very much.